The fog had rolled in so thick that morning, it looked like the forest was trying to swallow the world. Every tree was a grey silhouette, every sound muffled, as though the air itself was holding its breath. I've been hiking the Pine Hollow Trail system, an old network of looping paths that spiderweb through the valley, and I thought I knew it well enough, but that fog had a way of twisting the familiar. And before long, the trail markers might as well have been hieroglyphs. It started simple. I'd taken a side loop to see a small waterfall, planning to rejoin my group near camp by early afternoon. But a wrong turn near a fork led me deeper into the maze of trails, and within an hour I realised I hadn't seen another boot print or blaze in quite some time. My compass didn't lie, but it also didn't help much. The ridges and hollows tangled like a bowl of spaghetti, and north never seemed to lead where I expected. By mid-afternoon, the quiet was starting to get under my skin. The air smelled of damp pine and wet soil, and the occasional drip of water from branches was the only thing breaking the stillness. I paused near an old moss-covered trail sign so faded I couldn't make out a single word. That's when I heard it. A rustle in the brush, footsteps just ahead. My first thought was bear, but then a voice called out, clear and relieved. "Hey, you're not with the group from Ridge Loop, are you?" Out of the mist came a woman about my age, her jacket damp, her backpack streaked with mud. She gave me a half smile that looked equal parts humour and exhaustion. "Please tell me you know where we are," she said. I couldn't help but laugh. "If you were hoping for a guide, you picked the wrong stranger." Turned out her name was Claire, and she'd been hiking with a small photography group on the neighbouring trail system. They'd stopped for lunch near a creek, and she wandered off to photograph some wildflowers. And, well, here she was, miles off course. We stood there for a moment, two lost souls surrounded by fog, and then we both seemed to have the same thought. Better to be lost together than alone. So we set off side by side, following what looked like the most worn path downhill. The forest swallowed our voices, but it felt easier talking way. By late afternoon, the fog began to thin, breaking apart into drifting ribbons that caught the light like smoke. It was enough to lift our spirits, though we still had no clue which direction led back to civilization. We stopped near a cluster of boulders shaped like old tombstones, dropped our packs, and sat for a while, just listening. Somewhere far off, a woodpecker worked at a hollow trunk, and the sound echoed faintly through the trees. Claire pulled a crumpled granola bar from her jacket pocket and offered me half. "You know," she said, "I was supposed to be back at the trailhead by 2. My friends probably think I fell into a ravine by now." I chuckled. "My group's probably arguing about who forgot the marshmallows again. They won't notice I'm gone until dinner." That made her laugh, and it felt good hearing it, like a spark of normalcy in the middle of the unknown. After a minute, she glanced down at my map. "You've done this trail before?" "Years ago," I said, "but Pine Hollow's changed a bit. Some of these side paths were logging roads once. They twist around, connect to each other. It's like someone dropped spaghetti on a map and said, 'Good enough.'" She smiled. "That's comforting." I pointed to a faint dotted line that curved along the ridge. "If we follow the slope west, we might hit a stream. Streams usually lead to something: people, roads, camps." Claire nodded, shouldering her pack. "Lead the way, Captain." We started walking again, our boots squishing through the damp earth. The forest began to open up into taller pines with a soft carpet of needles underfoot, and the air smelled sharp and clean. We fell into an easy rhythm, trading stories to keep our minds off the uncertainty. She told me about growing up in Oregon, where her dad used to take her camping every summer. He'd say the woods could fix anything: bad days, broken hearts, you name it. Guess he forgot to mention they could also swallow you whole. I told her about the time I'd gone canoeing in the Boundary Waters and lost an entire tent to the wind. Watched it tumble like a runaway balloon right into the lake. We slept under the canoe. Something loosen in my chest. "See that?" I said. "Stream. Told you we'd find one." Claire grinned and dipped her hand in the cold current. "And from here," I said, looking down the winding ribbon of water, "we follow the sound of it home." We still had miles to go, and no guarantee of where it would lead. But for the first time all day, it felt like we were headed the right way. Not just out of the woods, but towards something worth finding. We followed that little stream as if it were a lifeline, winding deeper into the valley where the trees leaned close like old conspirators. At first, it was easy going, soft ground, a steady downhill slope, the water gurgling beside us like it knew the way. The air was cooling fast though, and the fading light made everything take on that bluish hue that tells you night's not far off. "Feels like it should have crossed the main trail by now," Claire said after an hour. She crouched to splash her face, her reflection trembling in the shallow current. "You sure this is leading us anywhere?" I knelt beside her and studied the water. "It's heading north. If it feeds into Pine Creek, we'll hit the logging road eventually." She eyed me skeptically. "And if it doesn't?" I grinned. "Then we rename it Lost Souls Brook and claim it for ourselves." She rolled her eyes, but the tension eased. We started walking again, swapping stories between breaths. She told me about her first solo trip in the Cascades, when she'd camped near a frozen lake and spent half the night convinced a bear was outside her tent. It turned out to be the wind snapping a loose flap. I shared about the time my buddy and I had to chase down a runaway tent in Wyoming, the thing rolling across the plain like a tumbleweed until it got caught on the fence post. The laughter helped, but as the shadows stretched long, I noticed the stream narrowing and veering east instead of north. It was tricking us, curling back into the heart of the woods instead of leading out. We stopped where a fallen cedar blocked the way, its trunk thick as a car, the bark slick with moss. "Well," Claire said, "canopy." We could finally see colour again, the sky bruising purple with dusk. We walked on in that violet light, the stream now more of a whisper. Every few minutes we'd stop, listening. I thought I heard something faint, maybe the distant rumble of traffic or the rush of a larger river. But it came and went like a mirage. Then Claire spoke softly, almost to herself. "You know, it's strange. I wasn't supposed to hike alone today. I joined that group because I wanted company, not adventure." "Guess the woods had other plans," I said. She smiled at that, but her eyes lingered on the fading trail. "Maybe that's the point, though. You lose your way. You meet someone else who did. And somehow that feels right." For a long while we walked without words, letting the sound of our steps and the low murmur of the stream fill the silence. Somewhere ahead, an owl called once, twice, as if reminding us that the night wasn't waiting on us to figure things out. We decided to make camp before dark fully swallowed the forest. As we gathered twigs and kindling beneath a leaning pine, I couldn't help thinking that maybe getting lost was the best thing that had happened to either of us that day. We built our camp a few yards off the stream, where the ground levelled out into a patch of pine needles soft enough to sit on. By the time we had a small fire going, the forest had gone entirely dark, except for the orange circle of light that pulsed against the trees. The smoke rose straight up through a gap in the branches, carrying the smell of resin and damp bark. It was the kind of scent that always reminded me of simpler times. Family trips. the hiss of a kettle, the quiet murmur of people who trusted the night to keep their secrets. Claire sat cross-legged across from me, her face flickering between shadow and flame. She'd managed to rig her jacket into a makeshift seat pad and was roasting a piece of trail mix on a stick just to have something to do. "I've been in worse spots," she said, poking the embers. "At least we've got fire and water. And company." I smiled, reflecting the flames. "I used to think that too. But lately," she paused, searching for the right words. "Lately, it feels like I've been walking in circles even when I'm not on a trail. Job changes, relationships that don't stick. Coming out here was supposed to clear my head. Instead, I got turned around." I looked into the fire, remembering a dozen quiet evenings alone in the wilderness, trying to make sense of my own choices. "Maybe the woods don't clear things up," I said. "Maybe they just make us honest about being lost." She smiled faintly at that, and for a moment the weight of the day lifted. The fire cracked, sparks floating up like little stars. We talked for a long time after that, about where we'd grown up, about our first camping trips, about small things that didn't matter but somehow did. Eventually, when the flames had burned down to a warm bed of coals, she unrolled her sleeping bag close to the fire. I did the same. Neither of us mentioned the possibility of rescue, or whether we'd find our groups tomorrow. It didn't seem important right then. Above us, the sky was patchy with stars where the trees opened up, and somewhere down the slope, the stream kept whispering its endless, directionless song. Just before she drifted off, Claire murmured, "You think we'll laugh about this someday?" I smiled into the darkness. "We already are." The fire popped once, and the woods settled back into their ancient rhythm. Lost or not, I felt exactly where I was meant to be. I woke before dawn to the soft hiss of the stream and the faintest grey light pressing through the trees. The air had that sharp bite only morning can give, a mix of cold earth, wood smoke, and something alive. Claire was still asleep, curled in her bag, one hand resting near the ashes of the fire. I sat there for a while, listening. Somewhere far off, I thought I heard the low growl of a truck engine, faint but real. "Hey," I said quietly, nudging her boot. "I think we've got company. Civilization kind." She stirred, groaning softly. "Don't tease me before..." Wide-brimmed hat was loading firewood into his truck bed. He looked up, squinting at us like we'd walked out of a dream. "Y'all hiking the hollow loops?" he asked. "Trying to," Claire said, brushing a pine needle from her hair. "We got creatively rerouted." He chuckled, hitching his thumb toward the west. "Happens all the time. Trails cross like spaghetti out here. Your camps are both that way, about 1.5 miles if you follow the road." Claire and I traded a look, something between pride and exhaustion, and thanked him. We started walking again, slower now, soaking in the sunlight after a long night of shadow. The road curved gently downhill, opening into fields of tall grass, still wet with dew. Every step felt lighter. Claire pointed toward a patch of purple wildflowers near the ditch. "That's what I was chasing when I got lost," she said, smiling. "Funny how a photograph can start a whole story." I nodded, and how getting lost can end up finding something better. We didn't say much after that. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, it was full. The kind of quiet you get only after a shared trial, when words aren't needed to fill the space. When the fork finally appeared, and the faint sound of voices drifted through the trees, her group calling her name, mine echoing somewhere farther off, we stopped for a moment. "Well," she said, shouldering her pack, Guess this is where the trail splits again. Guess so, I said. But next time you get lost, you know who to call. She smiled, offered her hand, and we shook, firm and warm. Then she turned toward her people and I toward mine, each following a different path out of the woods. But even as I walked away, I knew something had changed. The forest had given me more than a story. It had handed me a reminder. Sometimes, the best directions come from getting a little lost, and the best company is the one you don't expect to find. That night, back at camp, someone asked how the hike went. I just smiled at the fire and said, "Long story, but it's a good one."